Hey there, and welcome to the Magic Snail channel. This is where we share real life stories about people dealing with all kinds of situations. Some are funny, some are messy, and some are downright unbelievable. If you like hearing stories that feel real and keep you curious, you'll feel right at home here. So go ahead, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want more. We've got plenty of stories waiting for you.
He's been stealing from me since we were kids. Now he's taking my wife, too.
The burner phone buzzed under our mattress at 2:47 a.m. I wasn't supposed to find it. Harper thought I was dead asleep after pulling a 14-hour shift at the construction site. But insomnia had been my companion for weeks now, ever since she started working those mysterious late nights at her marketing firm. The phone's screen lit up the darkness. Unknown number. Text message. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. The cabin's ready. M. Harper stirred beside me, her auburn hair spilling across the pillow. Beautiful, ambitious Harper who'd married beneath her station. Harper who'd been distant for months, claiming work stress. Harper, who now apparently had a secret phone hidden in our bedroom. I slipped the device back under the mattress and stared at the ceiling until dawn. 3 days later, I knew everything. The man she'd been meeting was Mason Keller, my half-brother. The golden boy who'd inherited Dad's charisma while I got his calloused hands and stubborn streak. Mason with his real estate empire and $1,000 suits. Mason who'd always found ways to take what was mine. I discovered this sitting in my truck outside Rosewood Cabin, watching through binoculars as Harper's Honda pulled up beside Mason's BMW, watching her run into his arms like some romance movie, watching them kiss with the passion she'd stopped showing me 2 years ago. The dashboard clock read 3:15 p.m. Harper had told me she'd be in client meetings until 8. I drove home and started planning. My name is Adam Keller, 34 years old, equipment mechanic, married for 6 years to a woman who just destroyed my world. This is the story of how I destroyed hers back. But first, let me tell you how we got here. Harper and I met at a company picnic. She worked for Meridian Marketing. I fixed their copy machines. She was everything I wasn't. Polished, educated, confident in crowds. I was the quiet guy who could make anything mechanical work again. "You have gentle hands," she'd said, watching me repair the broken ice machine. I liked that. We dated for 8 months. Her friends thought she was slumming it. My friends thought I'd won the lottery. We were both probably right. The wedding was small but elegant. Harper handled all the planning. I just showed up in the tux she picked out and said my vows. Mason gave a toast about family bonds and second chances. Everyone laughed when he joked about keeping me in line. I should have seen the signs then. The way Harper's eyes lingered on him during the speech. The way Mason's hand stayed on her shoulder just a beat too long during photos. But I was in love. Love makes you stupid. The first 3 years were good. Harper climbed the ladder at Meridian. I started my own small repair business. We bought the house on Maple Street with the white picket fence and talked about kids. Year 4, things shifted. Harper's promotions came with longer hours and business trips. She'd come home exhausted, claiming her job was becoming more demanding. I believed her because I wanted to. Year 5, she stopped wearing her wedding ring to work. "It gets caught on papers," she explained. "Professional image." Year 6 started with Harper suggesting I expand my horizons. Maybe take some business classes. Network more. "You have so much potential, Adam. You just need to apply yourself." Translation, I embarrassed her. The distance grew. Fewer family dinners, separate bedrooms because of my snoring, Harper working weekends, Harper taking calls in private. And then came that night with the burner phone. After discovering the cabin meeting, I had a choice. Confront them immediately and watch my marriage explode in accusations and denials, or stay quiet and learn the full scope of their betrayal. I chose knowledge. For 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. Harper thought I was depressed about work. I let her believe it while I documented everything. I followed the burner phone signal using a tracker app. Harper met Mason twice weekly at various locations around town, the Riverside Motel, a wine bar downtown, sometimes just parked cars in empty lots. I installed a tiny camera in Harper's Honda while she slept. The conversations I recorded would have made sailors blush. "Adam's so predictable," Harper laughed during one drive with Mason. "Home by 6, dinner, TV, bed. God, it's like being married to a golden retriever. You deserve better, Mason replied. You always have. I know, I feel guilty sometimes. He's not a bad person. Guilt's a waste of time, Harper. Life's too short for settling. That hurt worse than the kissing. But the real revelation came during their third week of surveillance. Mason picked Harper up for what she'd told me was a girls' night with Carla. Instead, they drove to Mason's downtown office. Through the camera, I watched Mason spread documents across his desk. Loan applications, business proposals, real estate contracts. The construction company Adam wants to start, Mason said. I can make it happen faster than he thinks. Harper leaned over the papers. How? Your name's on his credit accounts, right? Joint checking? You could co-sign for the equipment loans. Get him the startup capital he's been saving for. Mason, that's fraud. It's family helping family. Adam gets his dream business. We get the collateral we need for the Phoenix project. I watched Harper hesitate, then nod. How much? 80,000 should cover it. The bank won't question anything with your income backing it. They'd planned to steal my future to fund their own. That night, I checked our accounts. Harper had already transferred 42,000 from our savings to a business account I'd never seen. The account was titled Keller Brothers Construction LLC. I wasn't listed as a partner. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the county courthouse. Public records showed that Mason had filed paperwork establishing Keller Brothers Construction 3 months earlier. The address listed was a property he owned in Phoenix. Harper had forged my signature on the Articles of Incorporation. I sat in my truck in the courthouse parking lot staring at the documents. 6 years of marriage, 12 years of loving someone who saw me as a stepping stone to something better. The rage that filled me wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold, calculating, patient. I drove to the library and researched everything I could about business fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. Then I visited 3 different banks and learned about loan processes, collateral requirements, and default procedures. Knowledge is power. I was about to become very powerful. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For the next month, I played the role of oblivious husband while building my case. Harper continued her charade of late work nights and weekend conferences. Mason sent flowers to our house twice, claiming they were thinking of you arrangements for my upcoming birthday. I documented everything. Photos of Harper leaving for her fake conferences, audio recordings of phone calls between her and Mason, screenshots of text messages from the burner phone. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed leverage. I found it through Amanda Walsh, Mason's ex-girlfriend from 2 years back. She worked as a paralegal downtown and had first-hand knowledge of Mason's business practices. He's been pulling this scam for years, Amanda told me over coffee at a diner across town. Find a patsy with good credit, use them to secure loans, then structure the business so they take all the liability when things go south. How many others? At least 3 I know of. One guy lost his house. Another had to declare bankruptcy. Amanda slid a manila envelope across the table. Financial records from when Mason and I were together, bank statements, emails, meeting notes. He keeps everything because his ego won't let him admit to failures. I opened the envelope. Bank records showing transfers from multiple personal accounts into Mason's various LLCs. Email chains discussing investor acquisition and liability shifting. Why are you helping me? I asked. Amanda's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because Mason Keller destroys everything he touches. And it's time someone returned the favor. That night, I started planning my revenge. The plan had 3 phases: documentation, disruption, and devastation. Documentation was nearly complete. I had enough evidence to bury both Harper and Mason in criminal charges and civil lawsuits. But I wanted more than legal victories. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness they'd forced on me. Disruption would target their resources and support systems. Mason's business depended on investor confidence and personal relationships. Harper's career required professional reputation and social standing. Both were about to crumble. Devastation would be personal, public, final. I started with Mason's investors. Using Amanda's records, I identified the 3 main financial backers for Mason's Phoenix project. Wealthy locals who'd trusted Mason with their retirement funds and vacation home money. I created anonymous email accounts and began sending them documentation of Mason's previous fraudulent schemes, bank records showing diverted funds, legal documents proving fake partnerships, photos of properties that existed only on paper. Within a week, 2 investors demanded emergency meetings. Mason's confident facade began cracking under their questions about financial transparency and project timelines. Meanwhile, I targeted Harper's professional network. Meridian Marketing prided itself on ethical business practices and community involvement. They'd featured Harper in their company newsletter as an example of integrity in action. I sent anonymous packages to Meridian's board of directors, copies of the forged incorporation documents, screenshots of Harper's text messages about defrauding her husband, audio recordings of her conversations with Mason about manipulating client accounts to hide their personal transactions. Harper was called into her supervisor's office 3 times that week. She came home increasingly agitated, claiming that office politics were becoming toxic. I offered sympathetic support while secretly documenting her growing panic. But the real disruption came when I hit their financial pipeline directly. Using the business account information I discovered, I filed fraud reports with both the IRS and State Commerce Department. I provided documentation showing that Keller Brothers Construction was operating without proper licensing, using falsified partnership agreements, and misrepresenting income sources. The investigations would take months to complete, but the immediate effect was freezing of all business accounts pending review. Mason's Phoenix project ground to a halt overnight. Harper received a call from their bank on a Tuesday morning. I listened from the kitchen as she argued with customer service about unauthorized holds on accounts she wasn't supposed to know existed. "This is ridiculous," she shouted into the phone. My husband never authorized any investigations. After she hung up, Harper sat at our kitchen table with her head in her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the burner phone and the feeling passed. "Everything okay?" I asked, pouring coffee. "Just work stress," Harper lied. "Some client payment issues." I nodded sympathetically and handed her the coffee. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." "You always do." She looked at me with something that might have been guilt or fear. 2 weeks later, the Phoenix project collapsed completely. Mason's investors pulled out after receiving additional anonymous packages containing surveillance photos of Mason and Harper together at various hotels. The final package included a professionally typed note. "Would you trust your retirement savings to a man who defrauds his own family?" Mason had to sell his BMW and downsize his office space. Harper stopped receiving mysterious flower deliveries, but I was just getting started. The confrontation phase began with Harper's birthday party. She'd planned a dinner at Enzo's, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary. Meridian colleagues, neighborhood friends, her college roommate visiting from Seattle. Harper wore the black dress I'd bought her for Christmas. She laughed at colleagues' jokes and posed for photos like everything was perfect. I played the devoted husband role flawlessly, held her chair, refilled wine glasses, shared embarrassing stories about our early dating days. During dessert, I stood to make a toast. 6 years ago, I married my best friend. I began, raising my glass. Harper has taught me so much about ambition, about reaching for dreams, about the importance of family bonds. The table murmured appreciation. Harper beamed. She's shown me that success requires sacrifice, that sometimes you have to take risks to build the life you want. More nods. Harper squeezed my hand. In fact, Harper has been taking some amazing risks lately, investing in new opportunities, building partnerships with people who share her vision. Harper's smile faltered slightly. I'm so proud of her business sense, her ability to see potential where others see obstacles, her talent for bringing people together for mutual benefit. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, which is why I wanted to share some of Harper's recent achievements with all of you. The envelope contained printed copies of Harper's text messages with Mason, the romantic ones, the ones discussing their Phoenix business schemes, the ones mocking our marriage. I passed the papers around the table like party favors. Harper went white as printer paper. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Sharing your success story," I replied calmly. "Everyone should know how talented you are at building partnerships." Her college roommate finished reading first. "Harper, what is this?" It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. Harper's voice filled the restaurant. "Adam's so predictable. God, it's like being married to a golden retriever." The table went silent, except for the recording of Harper and Mason laughing about my limitations. "Adam, stop!" Harper pleaded. "Why?" "This is your moment, Harper. Your friends should know the real you, the woman who forged signatures to steal from her husband. The wife who meets her lover at cheap motels while her husband works double shifts. Harper's supervisor from Meridian had turned red with anger. Harper, please tell me this isn't real. I can explain. Actually, I interrupted, let me explain for you. I stood and addressed the entire table like I was giving a presentation. For the past 4 months, my wife has been conducting an affair with my half-brother. They've been using forged documents to establish fake business partnerships in my name. They've stolen over $40,000 from our joint accounts to fund a real estate scam in Phoenix. And Harper has been feeding information about Meridian's clients to Mason for insider investment opportunities. The silence that followed was deafening. Harper shot to her feet. You're insane! This is all fabricated. I pulled out additional documents, bank statements, photos from the cabin, copies of the incorporation papers with her forged signature. DNA evidence from the motel receipts? I asked mildly. Or should we discuss the pregnancy scare you had last month that you didn't think I knew about? Harper's face crumpled. Several people at the table pushed back their chairs. Harper, her supervisor, said slowly, we need to talk. First thing Monday morning. I left $100 on the table for our meals and walked out. Harper followed me to the parking lot, screaming accusations and threats. I let her vent while I unlocked my truck. You don't understand, she finally said, switching to desperation. Mason convinced me that we were helping you, that the business would benefit everyone. Did Mason convince you to sleep with him too? Harper started crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative kind. Adam, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with Mason. I climbed into my truck and rolled down the window. Harper, you don't get to ask for mercy when you sold my life. I drove away, leaving her standing in the restaurant parking lot in her black dress and ruined makeup. The next phase required more direct action. Mason had been trying to reach me for days after Harper's birthday disaster. Text messages, voicemails, even showing up at my work site. I'd ignored them all while preparing for our inevitable confrontation. When I finally called him back, Mason's voice was strained with false confidence. Adam, we need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I agree. Tomorrow night, Miller's Quarry, 9 p.m. Miller's Quarry? Why there? Privacy. Just you and me, Mason. Time to settle family business. Miller's Quarry was an abandoned mining site 20 minutes outside town. Deep water, no cell service, no witnesses. Perfect for what I had planned. I arrived early and positioned my truck to block the only access road. When Mason's remaining vehicle, a rented sedan, pulled up, I was waiting with a tire iron and a duffel bag. Mason climbed out wearing designer jeans and a polo shirt. Wrong outfit for what was coming. Adam, listen. No, I cut him off. You listen. For 34 years, you've taken everything that was mine. Dad's attention, family opportunities, now my wife and my money. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Which part? Sleeping with Harper or stealing my savings? Mason tried his trademark charm smile. Look, Harper and I, that just happened. But the business thing was legitimate. I was going to make you a real partner once the Phoenix deal went through. I laughed. Actually laughed. Mason, I've seen the incorporation papers, the bank accounts, the investor agreements. My name appears exactly nowhere except on the fraudulent loan applications. Mason's smile faded. Okay, fine. Maybe I handled the paperwork poorly. But we can fix this. Split the profits fairly. Harper doesn't have to factor into business decisions. You're right, I said, pulling something from the duffel bag. Harper doesn't factor into anything anymore. I showed him the divorce papers I'd filed that morning, complete with evidence of adultery and financial fraud. Harper would get nothing except legal bills. Mason's face went pale. Adam, you're making a mistake. Harper loves you. This thing with me was just physical, a midlife crisis thing. Wrong answer. I swung the tire iron. Mason dove sideways, stumbling over loose rocks. Jesus, Adam, are you insane? Probably. We fought like animals in the dirt and gravel. Mason was taller but softer. I'd spent years swinging hammers and moving heavy equipment. The outcome was inevitable. When Mason was on the ground with a torn shirt, I zip-tied his hands behind his back and dragged him to the quarry edge. Adam, wait. We can work this out. I pulled out my phone and started recording video. Say hello to YouTube, Mason. Time for your public confession. I'm not confessing to anything. I showed him the water 20 feet below. That's fine. But this video will be automatically uploaded to every social media platform if I don't check in with my computer every hour. Mason's eyes went wide. You're bluffing? I wasn't. I'd spent 2 weeks learning about dead man switches and automatic uploads. Technology was wonderful when you had time to research. 30 seconds, Mason. Confess everything or go for a swim. Mason looked at the dark water, then at my face. Whatever he saw there convinced him I wasn't bluffing. Okay. I seduced Harper to get access to her financial accounts. I needed investment capital for the Phoenix project, and she was the easiest target. Keep going. I forged Adam's signature on the business documents, used his credit rating to secure loans I never intended to repay. The plan was to declare bankruptcy and leave him holding the debt. And Harper knew this? Mason nodded miserably. She knew. She helped. She thought we'd disappear to Phoenix together once the money came through. I stopped recording and sent the video to my secure email account. Congratulations, Mason. You just confessed to multiple felonies on camera. I left him zip-tied to a tree in his underwear with a cardboard sign around his neck. I steal from family. Someone would find him eventually. The humiliation would last forever. But I saved the best revenge for last. Harper had moved back in with her parents after I changed the locks on our house. She'd been calling constantly, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to desperate to threatening. I ignored them all until she showed up at my worksite with her father. Adam, her dad said, we need to discuss this situation rationally. Harper's father was a good man. Retired teacher, church deacon, genuinely believed in doing right by people. He had no idea what his daughter had become. Mr. Walsh, I appreciate you coming here, but this is between Harper and me. She says you fabricated evidence, made false accusations. I pulled out my tablet and showed him the audio recordings. Harper's own voice describing me as predictable and boring. Her laughter when Mason joked about my limitations. Mr. Walsh's face went gray as he listened. Harper, he said quietly, is this real? Harper couldn't meet his eyes. Daddy, it's complicated. Is it real? Yes. The disappointment in her father's expression was devastating. I almost felt sorry for Harper again. Almost. Mr. Walsh, I said, I'm not trying to hurt your family, but Harper made choices that destroyed our marriage and my financial stability. The legal system will handle the fraud charges. I just want to move on. He nodded slowly. I understand. Harper, we're leaving. After they drove away, I felt empty. 6 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and evidence files. But the story wasn't quite finished. The final confrontation came 3 months later at Casey's bar downtown. I'd been avoiding my old haunts, but I needed to tie up loose ends before leaving town permanently. Harper was there with Carla and 2 other friends from Meridian. She looked thin and tired. Her hair was shorter, less styled. She was drinking whiskey instead of her usual wine. She saw me immediately, but pretended not to. I ordered a beer and sat in a corner booth watching. Her friends were clearly uncomfortable. One kept checking her phone like she was looking for escape routes. Carla kept shooting glances in my direction. Finally, Harper's liquid courage kicked in. She walked over to my table with unsteady steps. Happy now? She slurred. Not particularly. I lost my job. Mason's in jail awaiting trial. My parents barely speak to me. I'm sorry about your parents. They don't deserve this. Harper laughed bitterly. But I do. You made choices, Harper. Adult choices with adult consequences. You could have just divorced me. You didn't have to destroy everything. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman I'd loved for 6 years. The woman who'd promised to love me back. Harper, you and Mason weren't planning to just steal my money. You were going to disappear together and leave me holding massive debt that would have ruined my life. Bankruptcy, destroyed credit, possible criminal charges when investigators found my forged signature on fraudulent documents. Mason said, Mason lied. To both of us. The difference is, you chose to believe him because it gave you what you wanted. Harper started crying again. I loved you, Adam. I really did. Maybe, but not enough. I finished my beer and stood to leave. Adam, wait. Harper grabbed my arm. Where are you going? What are you going to do now? I looked down at her tear-stained face. I'm going to build the life I should have had. Somewhere else, with someone who won't see me as a stepping stone to something better. Will you ever forgive me? I considered the question seriously. Probably, but I'll never forget. And I'll never trust you again. I walked away from Harper Walsh for the last time. 6 months later, I was living in a cabin outside Asheville, North Carolina. Mountain air, clean streams, and neighbors who didn't ask too many questions about your past. I'd used the evidence from Mason's schemes to recover most of our stolen money through civil court. Harper was ordered to pay restitution, but had no assets left. Mason was serving 3 years for fraud and would face additional civil suits when he got out. My divorce was final. My new business, legitimate this time, was growing steadily. I had a dog named Rex and a workshop where I repaired engines for local contractors. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was quiet, honest, mine. Sometimes I thought about Harper and Mason, whether they ever spoke, whether they blamed each other or themselves, whether Harper had learned anything from the wreckage of her choices. Mostly, I didn't think about them at all. I was sitting on my cabin porch one evening, watching the sunset over the mountains, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Adam, it's Carla, Harper's former friend. I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce. What can I do for you, Carla? I wanted you to know Harper's engaged. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no jealousy, nothing. Good for her. To her supervisor, the one who fired her. That's ironic. Adam, she's telling people you were abusive, that you fabricated evidence and threatened her. I sipped my coffee and watched a hawk circle over the valley. What people choose to believe says more about them than about me. Don't you want to defend yourself? Why? Anyone who knows me knows the truth. Anyone who doesn't isn't worth convincing. Carla was quiet for a moment. You're different now. Better or worse? Harder? Colder? Sometimes that's what survival requires. After hanging up, I sat thinking about the man I'd been versus the man I'd become. Harper and Mason had tried to destroy my life for their own gain. Instead, they'd freed me from caring what other people thought. I wasn't sure if that was a victory or a loss, but it was definitely final. The next morning brought news that would have mattered once. Mason had been released early for good behavior and was working at a fast food restaurant in Phoenix. Harper's engagement had ended after her fiancé learned about her criminal history. I deleted the messages without responding. My past was dead. My future was whatever I chose to make it. As I walked Rex through the mountain trails that morning, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't made me happy. Justice hadn't healed the betrayal. Moving on hadn't erased the pain. But it had given me something more valuable than happiness: peace. Not the peace of forgiveness or closure. The peace of knowing that some chapters end not with resolution, but with acceptance that some people will always choose to hurt others for personal gain. Harper and Mason had revealed their true natures. I'd responded with mine. The difference was, I could live with my choices. 3 years later, I met Sarah at a diner in town. She was a veterinarian, recently divorced, with 2 kids and a practical outlook on life. We started as friends, became partners, eventually fell in love the slow way that lasts. Sarah knew my history, all of it. She said it explained why I was careful with trust, but generous with loyalty. You're not broken, she told me one night as we watched her kids play in the yard. You're just careful. There's a difference. Sometimes, I wonder if I could have handled things differently. Been the bigger person. Could you have? I considered the question honestly. No, not then. Not with what they did. Then you handled it exactly as you needed to. Sarah was right. I'd made peace with the man I'd become. Harper and Mason had taught me that love without respect is manipulation, that trust without verification is stupidity, that forgiveness without consequences is enabling. Hard lessons, but valuable ones. I never saw Harper or Mason again. According to mutual acquaintances, Harper moved to Florida and worked in retail. Mason declared bankruptcy and moved back in with his mother. Their choices had consequences that lasted longer than their schemes. I'd kept one thing from the marriage: our wedding photo. Not for nostalgia, but as a reminder of how convincing lies can be when you want to believe them. Sometimes late at night, I look at that photo and remember the man who'd believed in happily ever after. I didn't miss him exactly, but I respected his optimism. The man I'd become was harder, but wiser, careful, but not cynical. He understood that some people would always choose selfishness over loyalty, but he'd also learned that not everyone was Harper or Mason. Sarah proved that every day. On our wedding day, small ceremony, no speeches about family bonds. Sarah's maid of honor asked if I had any advice for their marriage. Trust, but verify, I said. Love doesn't survive betrayal, but it can survive honesty. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand. Even when honesty hurts. Especially then. As we danced to our first song, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately led me to someone who understood the value of loyalty. Harper and Mason had taken everything I thought I wanted and taught me what I actually needed. I never thanked them for the lesson. But I never forgot it either. Sometimes the best revenge is simply outliving the people who tried to bury you.